Hey, everybody. Welcome. I'm sorry I have this glare on my glasses. I have to figure out a good way because I need to be able to see comments because it's a part of the story show. But that means a glare on my glasses. So we're figuring out new places. But I do have my cool name. Oh, wait, I'm pointing this way. Look at that. Check that out. I've got a subtitle. Not really, but it does say Mo Reynolds. And that's me. And I'm here to tell you some stories. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We don't have anybody here yet, so I'll give a few minutes. It is Tuesday. Good morning, Alan. Hello. Thanks for coming. I can see that you're watching on Facebook. So, see, I am multi-streaming here, guys. It's like I'm riding a bicycle and eating pie at the same time because that's impressive. And so I'm streaming on Facebook in this direction and I'm streaming on YouTube in this direction to see where people are because, hey, some people like Facebook, some people like YouTube. So either way, I'm just glad to be back. So I know I've been gone for a while. We went down to Utah to celebrate to commemorate my wonderful in-laws that live in Utah. They lost our little baby boy about 5 years ago. He would have been 5 on April 30th. They lost him as a little baby. And they had just moved into a new house, which is kind of hard. I don't know if any of you have ever done that when you lose someone and then you move houses. It's hard because the house that you were in is where you knew them and where they were. And so it can be kind of a hard thing to change. And so it was sort of this impromptu thing. Some family said, hey, what if we get together to honor this big birthday? 5 is kind of a big monument to pass. And then we put a tree in. His name is Nash. And so they put an ash tree in their yard, and then we were going to plant the tree. And with all the craziness of COVID and everything, travel, I didn't know if I should go, but my husband and I both felt really strongly for some reason that we should go and be a part of it. So we went down. And it was wonderful. We got an RV, so we would be sort of self-contained, and we had just a wonderful time with family and played games and laughed a lot. And my father-in-law was there. My mother-in-law couldn't come, but my father-in-law was there, and all of my husband's siblings were there. With most of the wives could come with most of the kids, and it was just a big party. Thanks, Alan. It was really nice to plant a tree, and so we all were having just this delightful time, and we wanted to be responsible. So we had gotten this RV, and we had this RV, and then we figured, well, since we're all sort of self-contained in this RV, we'll go on a little family trip, just our family, because it's been such a crazy time and trapped in the house. And we were, so we had rented this RV, and we were going to drive down to Cedar City, Utah, and see Bryce and go hiking. And the national parks are just kind of starting to open, and we'd have this RV so we wouldn't have to really interact with people. And we thought this is going to be great. So we had this great time with the big family. And then we went down to Cedar City to have some time with our little family. And we had s'mores and we talked, and then we had the RV. It was just such a wonderful night. We spent one night there. And then on the second day, we were set to go camping, or not camping, but hiking and do some red rocks climbing and maybe cliff jumping. For my son, that's not what I do, but my son loves it. And so we were down there when we got the phone call that my father-in-law had just had a massive heart attack, an aortic aneurysm, and had died. And we were just so in shock and sad, and we prayed and we cried, and we were so grateful that we were already down there and that we were only 3 hours away instead of a 12-hour drive. And that we had just had time with him. We had just played games with him, and we had just hugged him and just been with him. And it was just such an amazing blessing. So then we were down there for yet another week when we thought we would be home, and we stayed down there for another week, and to mourn together and to hold each other and to cry and to pray and just to try to get through the experience as best we could. And then we had the funeral, which was an amazing, wonderful funeral. Thank you again. So many people sent out thank yous thank you for so many people sending out love and support and prayers and all of these wonderful things. So thank you for those thoughts and feelings. We definitely felt them. And the funeral was just wonderful. It was emotional. I had a headache for several days of crying through the whole experience. But it was also full of laughter and music. We sang, my husband and his siblings sang Don't Fence Me In. My father-in-law was a cowboy through and through, raised in Cody, Wyoming, raising horses, such a cowboy. I'm going to tell you some more stories about that. And he said, he told his wife that at his funeral, he wanted Don't Fence Me In sung. Don't fence me in. It's a great song. Maybe I'll post it. My husband and his siblings singing it. So they all got together and sang it. They had guitars. And then everyone at the funeral, which was only immediate family because of COVID, all sang it. Don't give me land, lots of open land. It's a wonderful song. And it was just perfect for his funeral and his farewell. It was great. So that's why I haven't been telling stories. Originally, I was going to miss a week because we were going to go on a trip as a family. And then I missed a week because of the funeral and those things. So it's been a couple of weeks, right? But how are you? I hope everyone's having a wonderful day, making the best of what they are and what they're doing and where they are and all of that wonderful stuff. So if you've done anything cool, I would love to hear about it. What have you been up to? Put some comments in. I can't wait to hear from everyone again. I know it's been a while, so we may not have a lot of people tuning in as we're getting back into our groove, but it's really wonderful to be back. I know I have this glare, which is kind of annoying. Maybe I'll just take my glasses off. And I still need to figure out the lighting in this studio, and I'll have to squint like this to read your comments, but I can do that, right? So let me adjust. I've got my studio a little bit different. I moved it up. So my wall is kind of closer in behind me and I can stand up, which feels better when I'm telling a story. So that's awesome. Oh, Alan went golfing in Kansas. That's great. Alan, we're going to have to get in touch because I might be coming through Kansas in a few weeks. So for my mom is coming out to stay with us in Montana for a while, so maybe we can connect in Kansas. Awesome. Anyway, well, I can't wait to hear what everyone's been doing, and see pictures if you want to send me pictures. I'm just glad to be back telling you a story. Okay, so let's get started. Whoever's here is here, and maybe they're watching later, but I'm gonna, thank you, Joe. Thank you for the comments. Blessings for me and my family. Yes, we are creating lots of wonderful stories together. And today I'm going to tell you some stories. You ready? Here we go. Clap and clap. Oh, it feels good to be back. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go with Miss Mo. Two more. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go with Miss Mo. Last time. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go with Miss Mo. Shh. Thank you, Robin. Oh, I just got a hug from Robin. Can we all just hug each other for a second? We're still so far away from each other. We're able to get together in small groups, but sometimes we're still not hugging. So let's just hug each other. That feels so good. Thanks, Robin. Everybody hug each other. Oh, yes. Lots of hugs. Now, I'm going to start with a story that maybe I've told you before, but it is one of my favorite stories. In fact, I told it in Florida, where Robin is from. And so if I've told you before, oh, well, we all like to listen to stories again, right? So in this story, there are 3 brothers, and these 3 brothers are members of the Menominee tribe. Isn't that a fun word to say? Menominee. Reminds me of that Muppet song. Menomina, do, 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 do. Menomina, do, 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 do. Menomina. Anyway, it's the Menominee tribe, and they live in an area that we now know as Wisconsin. I don't think they called it Wisconsin then, but that's what we call it now. So the Menominee tribe, these 3 brothers were members of, and they decided to go on a vision quest together. And they sought out the highest mountain in Wisconsin. Now, I don't know how many high mountains there are in Wisconsin, but I stand in judgment of no man's vision quest. And so they found the highest mountain they could in Wisconsin. And there they stood and waited for the Great Spirit to come down. And he did. The Great Spirit came down, and he looked at the oldest brother, and he said, "You have come a very long way. What is it that you wish?" And the oldest brother looked at him, And he said, I wish to always be able to protect my family and my friends. I wish to be the greatest warrior in the land. The Great Spirit looked at the eldest brother and he nodded his head and he said, that is a very noble wish. Let it be done. And then this wind started to swirl, and there were leaves, and this misty fog descended all around the oldest brother so no one could see him at all. And finally, the wind settled, and the leaves laid quietly on the ground. And when the mist and the fog cleared, there stood the oldest brother. And his eyes were sharp, and his muscles looked a little bit bigger, tougher. And the Great Spirit smiled and said, it is done. Then the second brother looked at the Great Spirit, and the Great Spirit looked at him. And the Great Spirit said, you too have come a long, long way. What is it that you desire? And the second brother said, I wish to always be able to provide food for my family and my friends. I wish to be the greatest hunter in the land. The Great Spirit nodded and said, that is a noble wish. Let it be done. And again swooped up the leaves, and again fell the fog and the mist all around, hiding the middle brother. And finally the leaves settled down and the fog went up, and there stood the brother. And he looked like a spring ready to pop open. Every nerve was ready. He was the greatest hunter. And the Great Spirit nodded and said, it is done. Then he turned to the third brother, who was sort of shifting back and forth on his feet. And he smiled and he said, you also have come a very long way. What is it you desire? The youngest brother looked down and looked up and he said, really? I'm a good hunter and I'm a decent warrior. I'm young, strong. Really, what I wish for is to stay exactly like this forever. The Great Spirit nodded and said, that is a wish. Let it be done. And again, whoosh, in came the wind, and the leaves swirled, and the mist and the fog descended, covering the third brother, and it swirled. And then slowly the wind ceased, the leaves settled, the fog cleared, and there stood an enormous rock. And the Great Spirit smiled and said, it is done. My father-in-law's name is Gary, and he is wonderful. He grew up in Cody, Wyoming. And in Cody, he lived in old barracks, army barracks that had been built on the land or moved onto that land. They had been used after World War II for the Japanese internment camps, which is another story and kind of a sad one. But they had all these leftover army barracks after World War II. And so if someone was willing to go and take one of these barracks and live in it in Wyoming and make a living there for 5 to 10 years and homestead, then they could keep the land. Now, my father-in-law's mom and dad were living in Vernal, Utah, and his dad, named Belden, said, well, Virginia, that was his wife, let's go see if we can make a go of it. And so they did. They took their young family, they lived in these barracks, they had all this land, they started raising horses, they had to clear land and hunt and farm and work, and they did it. They had 7 kids, and my father-in-law was one of them. And they worked hard, and they had hard things happen to them. In fact, when my father-in-law was about 3 or 4 years old, he was in a big metal wash tub in front of the fireplace. And his older sister, Annie, was giving him a bath. And I imagine the water wasn't very clean because I think all the kids took the bath in the same water. No judgment. And so Annie was giving him a bath, and one of his other brothers, I think it was Bob, his brother Bob, was tending the fire. Well, his brother, I don't know if he did this on purpose, if he was playing with the fire. I have kids that like to play with fire, so I can understand this. But he was trying to get the fire just a little bit hotter. Maybe it was taking a while to catch on, and it gets cold in Cody, so he wanted a nice hot fire. So we took a can of gasoline, and he was just going to splash a little bit on the fire to make it go. So he splashed a little bit. But what happened was, as the gasoline came out of the can, all the gasoline, it was like a rainbow of fire. And Bob panicked. And so he tried to throw the can up in the air. And what happened? The rainbow of fire went up the wall and caught the whole house on fire. And it burned fast. And my father-in-law's sister, Annie, scooped my father-in-law out of the bucket and got everybody out of the house. There were 5 kids at home. The mom and dad were at a church meeting in town. And so Annie got all of her little brothers and sisters out of the house. And like that, their house was burned to the ground. So they had to start over because sometimes change happens, right? But they knew how to start over, and they were a tough family. And sometimes toughness comes from something deep, deep, deep inside of us, something that's been passed down through our blood and our bones, right? And so that is true of the Reynolds family. Oh, Alan's family also homesteaded, and my family has homesteading. My great-great-grandparents were homesteaders in Oklahoma. And so that kind of courage to homestead, sometimes it's just inside your guts, right? Well, the Reynolds family, my grandmother-in-law, I guess is what you would call it, Virginia, she was a Noel. And her stock had come from Virginia. That's why her name was Virginia. So her great-great-grandpa grew up on a plantation in Virginia. My father-in-law, Gary, has this big book. It's called 80 Years in America. And it's a journal that his great-great-grandpa kept. And his name was Frank Noel. And so he would write stories about what it was like growing up. And there were 5 boys in his family, which is funny because my husband is one of 5 boys. Cool, huh? And those 5 boys got into all kinds of mischief on the plantation. Their father had died when they were quite young, and their mother was doing the best to run their home and their family. And so those boys were left on their own lots of times. They had lots of chores and lots of things to do, but when they had free time, they went a little bit crazy. And one day they saw a cat, this big cat with a big fluffy tail. And they also saw a possum. And the possum also has a long tail. And those boys looked at that cat and that possum, and they got a very terrible idea. First, they caught the cat and they put it in a burlap bag. Next, they caught the possum and they put it in a burlap bag. Now, I would like to note that I am not condoning the behavior in this story, but even when someone makes bad choices, it can still make a very good story. And so they had the possum in the bag. And then they had the cat in the bag. And they looked around, and there was a clothesline. And someone had just taken the laundry off, so the clothesline was nice and empty. How handy. And so they reached in the cat bag, and they pulled out just the tail of the cat. And then they reached in the possum bag, and they pulled out just the tail of the possum. And then they tied those 2 tails together. I'm sure the cat and the possum are wondering, what is going on today? I should not have gotten out of bed. This is not worth it. Then they carried those bags over to the clothesline, and they threw the cat over, and one brother caught it. So there was the cat bag, and there was the possum bag, and their tails were hooked over the line. Can you guess what they did next? On the count of 3, they planned to take off the bags. 1, 2, 3. They pulled off the bags, and suddenly there was an upside down possum, and there was an upside down cat, and they were staring at each other, and their tails were tied at the top, and whoo, what a fight came then. Scratching and hissing and pawing, and fur is flying, and whiskers are getting torn off, and they're punching each other, and they're clawing each other, and they're scratching each other, and the boys are circled around laughing as hard as they can. In fact, Noel wrote that he had never seen such a fight. And they're laughing so hard that they didn't notice their mother coming out on the porch. Now I can imagine this woman looking at this cat and possum clawing away at each other on the clothesline. And I'm guessing that she had 2 instincts right then. The first, perhaps, was to laugh. And the second, which overcame the first, was horror. And so she put her hands on her hips, I'm imagining, and she yelled, "Boys, cut those animals down right now!" And so the boys did. They went and they untied him, and I imagine got some scratches, which they completely deserved. And they brought down the cat, they brought down the possum, they ran off in their directions, and they had extra chores and extra sores on their rear ends for the rest of that day. But in this book that we read that tells us this story, great-great-grandpa Noel wrote, "But it was all worth it to see such a fight." You see, it's good to laugh at those kinds of stories. And my father-in-law, he had lots of silly stories of his own. In fact, one time he had to get surgery on his knee. This is one of my favorite stories about my father-in-law because he is so calm. He's very calm, and he's very measured, and he's very deliberate, and he's very respectful, but not when he is on pain medication. And so my father-in-law had knee surgery, and he was on lots of crazy medicine that made him go a little bit cuckoo in the head. He had some reactions, right? So he had just gotten surgery, and he was lying in bed. He had just woken up from surgery. And because he had just had surgery, and he's wearing those cool little shirts that you wear when you go to the hospital, he didn't have any underwear on or any pants on, just had this little dress on, right? Now he was in Utah, and my mother-in-law's sisters-in-law, came to visit him and bring him some flowers. And he was just waking up, and he was all high on this pain medication when they walked in. And their names were Paula and Cher. Not the Cher, another Cher I'm not actually related to. If we could turn back time. That'd be cool, but it's a different Cher. So Paula and Cher walk in, and there's Gary lying on the bed with a blanket on him and his knees all bandaged up and gotten his surgery. Paula and Cher come in, and they have some flowers. They're like, "Oh, hi, Gary. Well, how are you feeling? How's it healing up?" And Dad looks at them and said, "Oh, it's healing great. Just check it out." And he pulled back his blankets and his little dress, and he lifted his knee up high in the sky so that Paula and Cher and any doctor or nurse or anyone that happened to be walking by saw everything. And he didn't even care. "Look at the stitches. They did a great job. Doesn't it look amazing?" And there he is showing his behind parts to everybody in the hospital. And my mother-in-law just died. "Gary, put your leg down. Gary, you're not wearing any underwear. Put your leg down, Gary." But he didn't have any clue. Didn't bother him at all. And Cher and Paula just died laughing, because Gary would never have done anything like that. It's important to laugh about those stories. When we got the news that Grandpa died, everything changed. It felt like the whole world had just stopped. And as we walked around, packing up our RV so we could drive, we're walking and people are still, they're laughing and they're having their breakfast. And I remember looking at them and thinking, how can you just be making a campfire? How can you laugh? Don't you know that everything has changed? But then I realized everything always is changing. And everybody has their own sadness inside of them. Because being sad is a part of being human. And we can feel happy and sad at the same time. And I hugged my kids close and I told them that. And I said, I know we'll see Grandpa again, but I also know that it's okay to be sad. And so we tell stories, right? And we laugh about them. And while we laugh, they also make us sad. And that's okay, because we can feel them both all at the same time. Isn't that incredible? So today, I want you to think about somebody that maybe you've said goodbye to. And think about a story about them that you remember. And I would love for you to find a story of someone that's still around. Ask mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle to tell you a story. Because what the third brother was trying to do, stay the same forever, that just doesn't work. Everything changes. In fact, that rock that was the third brother, the Menominee tribe call it the Spirit Rock. And their legend is that as long as that rock exists, their tribe will exist. But if you look at pictures of the Spirit Rock from 100 years ago to 50 years ago to 10 years ago, you'll see that that rock is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because wind happens and rain happens, life happens, and even rocks change. Rocks change, we change, life changes, and some of those changes are happy, and some of them are sad, and some of them are both, and that's all okay. So, change is okay. All right? Okay, guys, thanks for listening to the story today. I hope you have a wonderful, hi, Galatea. It's so good to see you. Thank you for saying hi. I love it when you guys say hi. It's good to be back. Oh, Alan says his grandpa died in 2018 and he loved telling stories about World War II. Oh, those are great stories. To escort a rubber ship from South America to the USA through the Caribbean. Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah. Dig for stories, you guys. Ask grandma and grandpa today. Call them. Call uncles and aunts and cousins and say, hey, what was life like when you were little? Tell me a story. Because those don't last forever. Oh, and my cousin just showed up. Her mom is Paula, and so she was there. All righty, guys. Should we say goodbye? I'll be back on Thursday with another story. This story is all fun. It's about a very smart woman. Whoops, I hit my computer. Very smart woman and a very confused horse. I'll see you Thursday. You ready? Miss Mo, Miss Mo, Miss Mo has got to go to more. Miss Mo, Miss Mo, Miss Mo has got to go. Last time, Miss Mo, Miss Mo, Miss Mo has got to go. Bye. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you on Thursday. Tell someone a story. Mwah. Bye.